Hi everyone, it's Lynn from the Stitch TV show. I'm going to do another episode of Shop My Stash. So this is kind of how I approach color for this quilt behind me. And I think I'm going to kind of jump off of where the last we talked about how I use designer fabric that I fell in love with. And then I cheat, not really, but I use their color combinations to create my quilt. And don't necessarily put their fabric in my quilt. So this was my jumping off point. I love orange, if you all know. And I really loved the mums and how it was the orange and reds and pinks together. And I thought that was great. So I decided I wanted to make a quilt that had similar colors to this. And I wanted to make a Lone Star quilt, a broken Lone Star quilt. So this is the Quilt Smart version of Lone Star. So anyway, so in looking at this, I'm like, okay, what colors can I find in my stash? So of course, first I start with orange. Yay. And I have good orange polka dot. So you can see how that orange polka dot really picks up that orange and it's very consistent. So that's nice. And this is a linen. So it's like a really neat texture. I like good texture. So this is that. So I've got that, the orange. And then I need to find, lighter and darker of that orange. So I went with the plaid. And it's a little bit darker than this, although they're really close in color. But it does bring in I guess it's a little bit lighter actually. It does bring in the kind of a yellow or a brighter orange. And then I went with this stripe, which is hard to tell. Or I'm sorry, this is shock cotton. So this is shock cotton. So I've got some light here. Then again, I'm always taking it back to, I think that looks good with this. I think that looks good. It kind of brings in that light and dark. So I'm building my oranges. And this helped because I did know how many fabrics I needed because I was making a Lone Star. And I wanted to actually, and this is my stripe. It's a cute little teeny tiny stripe. I love it. So you can see how these kind of blend. They're all different oranges. I do have a lot of orange in my stash, just saying. And then you'll notice that this has that kind of grayish blue. So I kind of jumped off that and did some teal like that. And orange and teal look, that was the thing on the other day on What's Up Stitches. They were like, did orange and teal go together? And yes, they do. So that was my jumping off point. Those are the fabrics that I started with that I was going to use. And I knew how many I wanted to use because I was making a broken Lone Star. So I knew that I needed 7 fabrics. When you look at a broken Lone Star, or when you look at a Lone Star, these are your wedges, right? Or blades. I've heard them called blades. So these are your blades. And I knew I wanted my blade to go from a teal to the lightest of orange. So I chose fabrics. And by the way, that's a red. I couldn't find it in my stash anymore because apparently I've used it all. So this is a red. So I went from this teal look in the center, and then I did a solid kind of teal. This is yellow. Now notice yellow isn't in the jumping off fabric. There's a little bit of light orange, but it's not really yellow. But the yellow had little splashes. It's hard to tell from there, but there's little polka dots in the yellow that kind of have the pinks and the teals in it. So it just gave me a little sparkle in it, which I liked. And then, and this kind of stands out. Notice that the yellow kind of gives me a little pop around the quilt. Yellow is one of those really interesting colors that when you put it in a quilt, it can overwhelm a quilt. And it's because yellow is the brightest of the colors in the light spectrum. Or it can just add that little bit of interest. So just a splash of yellow sometimes is just will add some brilliance to your quilt. So notice a little splash of yellow. And then my background, I'm not afraid to put unexpected things in the background, right? Because I just think it gives you more depth, more interest. So this is a map of Paris. fabric, which I think gives you a really interesting look, this map of Paris. And it's a light enough shade that it gave me a nice value. But you can see where I went from this teal to these oranges, and I made this polka dot orange my blaze color. They say the blaze color is the color that is always touching when you look at a Lone Star or broken Lone Star. It's always touching. None of the other colors touch, but the blaze always touches no matter how you arrange your blades. So if I turn this inside or out, I think you'll see that because I'm going to show you another Lone Star I did. I got fascinated with Lone Stars for a while. I've made 4 of them. I've quilted 2 because it does take me a little bit to quilt them. And then I practiced and I had fun with ruler work with this one. The key with ruler work, actually, if you want to get a lot of dimension in your quilt, ruler work, the key with that is you don't quilt some places and you quilt really heavy other places, and then that gives you dimension. So this is heavily quilted, but this isn't, so it gives me that kind of dimensional pop that you can see. The other trick is to double bat, which is expensive, but if you're doing, if you really want dimension, double batting will give you some neat dimension. And what it does is if you lay down a cotton bat first, and then you put a wool bat on top of it, this will never not be puffy. And cotton has memory, wool doesn't. So just remember that little trick too. So, but you can see as I shopped my stash, I was able to get this inspirational piece without using any of that in my quilt. So it looks like I'm brilliant when really I just used a fabric that I was attracted to kind of inspire my quilt. And I wasn't scared to go off palette. You know, there is no yellow in the thing, but again, I think we talked about this in another one. I just kind of wanted this as a sparkle, and it helps move your eye around the quilt. That sparkle does, right? So, quick episode of Shop My Stash. Just don't be afraid to put color combinations together. Use tricks of, being inspired by different pattern designers. I'm pretty sure that was a Cave Facet fabric. And, put color combinations that you like. I truly believe that any colors can go together, and it's just a matter of how you put them together, and you'll be successful. So like, share, and subscribe, and we will talk to you later on the Stitch TV show.